Hey guys, tonight we slip through the folds of time and find ourselves standing in the smoky, dawn-damp air of ancient Rome. The marble gleams faintly beneath your sandals, but don't be fooled. Beneath that postcard glow lies a city of sweat, soot, and very loud pigeons. You can almost hear the muffled roar of the Tiber as it gurgles through mist, carrying yesterday's garbage downstream. Somewhere behind you, a man curses at his mule. Ahead, the forum begins to stir. And you? You're not supposed to be here. You're the accidental tourist with 21st century breath mints in your pocket and not a single clue how to ask for breakfast without getting arrested. You probably won't survive this, but that's half the fun, right? So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. The air tastes like coal dust and stale olives. You blink, squinting at your own reflection in a puddle. It looks strangely cinematic, like one of those Netflix historical dramas, but with worse hygiene. First lesson? Forget everything your high school textbook told you about civilization. Ancient Rome is loud, filthy, and teeming with contradictions. There's a senator in a spotless white toga arguing about virtue while a slave scrubs pigeon droppings off his sandals. A baker carries loaves on a wooden tray calling out prices in Latin so fast it sounds like music. And somewhere down a side alley, someone's being robbed politely. Historians still argue whether Rome was the cleanest city of the ancient world or the smelliest. Archaeologists find sophisticated sewers and public baths, but also mountains of refuse casually dumped into the streets. You can smell the argument.
Your first task, blend in. A kind-eyed merchant offers you what looks like a bedsheet. That's your toga, or at least the budget version. Wrapping it is like folding a fitted sheet during an earthquake. The moment you think you've got it, it slips. The merchant snickers and mutters "barbaras" under his breath. Congratulations, you've just been demoted to weird foreigner. The sun creeps higher, setting rooftops ablaze in gold. You join the crowd heading toward the forum. Romans move with purpose, even if it's just to argue. It's said the average Roman citizen spent half his day complaining about taxes, the weather, or the emperor's latest ego trip. You fit right in. A trumpet echoes. That means the city gates are opening fully and trade begins. You notice something odd. Everyone's wearing tiny amulets, little phallic charms called fascina, meant to ward off evil spirits. Yes, even toddlers. It's equal parts superstition and fashion statement. You resist the urge to giggle, but the man next to you proudly adjusts his necklace as though it's a Rolex. By mid-morning, you've realized time travel doesn't come with sunscreen. The Roman sun is merciless, bouncing off marble and frying your retinas. Someone offers you a paste made of crushed olives and crocodile dung, apparently an ancient skincare hack. You decline, deciding a mild sunburn is preferable to smelling like a reptile's bathroom. You wander through the marketplace, the beating heart of the city. Vendors shout over each other, promising the freshest fish, the strongest wine, the purest perfume. A man with only 3 teeth insists his garum, a fermented fish sauce, is the best in Rome. He pops open a jar, and the smell could stun a horse. And yet, the locals can't get enough of it. You spot jars labeled Imperial Reserve. Turns out even emperors drowned their food in this pungent delicacy. A senator strides past, flanked by 2 slaves carrying scrolls. He glances at you, then quickly away, because your toga is tied wrong. Class in Rome isn't just about money. It's about fabric geometry. Tie it wrong, and you're practically invisible. Tie it too perfectly, and you might be mistaken for someone dangerous. Either way, you're playing social roulette with every fold. One quirky truth: Romans hated being alone. They filled every waking moment with noise: chatter, chanting, hammering, hawking. Silence made them uneasy. So when you pause to breathe and hear only the wind, it feels almost sacred. A dog barks, a baby wails, someone somewhere drops a pot and curses Jupiter. Back to reality. At the edge of the forum, a statue of Caesar looms. His marble eyes seem to follow you. You half expect him to whisper, "Don't trust anyone." And he'd be right. Politics here is a blood sport played in rhetoric instead of football fields. You overhear two men arguing about grain shipments. Apparently, the Tiber flooded again, ruining the crops. One swears it's a sign the gods are angry. The other blames the government. Plus ça change. Historians still debate whether Rome's frequent famines were divine punishment, poor planning, or just bad luck. Either way, you make a mental note: never time travel without snacks. By afternoon, heat ripples across the cobblestones. You duck under a shady portico, sharing space with a stray cat who looks unimpressed by human history. The marble columns rise like frozen waterfalls. You can almost feel the hum of the past, the 1,000 footsteps that have echoed here before yours. Some belong to slaves, others to emperors, but all eventually fade into dust.
A water seller approaches, holding a clay jug. You take a sip and instantly regret it. It's slightly salty, possibly Tiber runoff, and definitely the worst latte of your life. Still, you manage a polite nod. The man grins, toothless but proud. Hospitality here is sacred, even if the beverage might kill you. The shadows stretch. Somewhere nearby, a woman plays a double flute. The sound drifts like a lullaby. The crowd thins as people retreat indoors. You stand amid the cooling stones, wrapped in a toga that still doesn't sit right, and realize you've survived your first Roman morning. That's no small feat. You haven't been arrested, poisoned, or accidentally sacrificed. Yet. Night falls quickly in the ancient world. Oil lamps flicker in doorways, turning the streets into tunnels of gold. You catch a whiff of roasted chestnuts and wine and something unidentifiable, but probably edible. The city sighs into darkness, restless and alive. Somewhere in that labyrinth of alleys lies every story you've ever read about glory, greed, and genius, waiting for you to trip over them. Tomorrow, you'll learn what happens when you eat with the powerful. For now, pull your toga tighter, avoid eye contact with anyone holding a dagger, and remember, this was the center of the world once, and you're standing in it, heartbeat syncing with ghosts.
The first thing you notice when you wake is the smell. It's everywhere. Thick, sour, ancient. A mix of smoke, garlic, and something that might be goat. The city wakes before the sun, and the streets hum like a hive. You're still in the same toga from last night, and now it feels like wearing a slightly damp bed sheet dipped in history. Your sandals stick a little with every step. Somewhere nearby, a baker is pulling loaves from a clay oven, and the crusty scent cuts through the air like salvation. You follow it. Rome, you quickly learn, is not built for sleep. There are no quiet corners, no traffic laws, and definitely no personal space. A cart rumbles past, iron wheels screeching against stone. A boy runs beside it, shouting prices for bread, while his dog nips at his heels. You sidestep a puddle that looks suspiciously like yesterday's wine. A woman leans out from her upper window, dumping a pot of something you really hope is just water. The ancient Romans called it sterquilinium, organic waste disposal, street edition. You flatten yourself against a wall, barely dodging a history lesson in hygiene. Historians still argue whether ancient Rome smelled worse in summer or winter. In the heat, garbage festered faster. In the cold, smoke from wood fires choked the air. Either way, your nose deserves a medal. You wander deeper into the chaos. A fishmonger waves a half-cleaned mullet at you, declaring it fresh from Ostia. The fish's glassy eyes suggest it's been on quite a journey. Nearby, a stall sells amphoras of garum, the famous fermented fish sauce that Romans put on everything. The vendor gives you a free whiff.
You recoil, eyes watering. He laughs. Apparently, your disgust is the correct tourist reaction. You remember hearing once that entire Roman neighborhoods were built around garum factories, where vats of rotting fish guts fermented under the Mediterranean sun. Workers probably got used to it. You, however, are ready to invent air fresheners 3,000 years early. Still, you're fascinated. Every smell tells a story. There's the sweet whiff of honey cakes from a nearby vendor, the metallic tang of fresh blood from the butcher's block, the smoky perfume of olive oil lamps being trimmed and relit. Life here isn't sanitized. It's raw, loud, and alive.
You wander toward the market square, the Forum Burarium, Rome's ancient cattle market. A crowd gathers around a storyteller performing dramatic reenactments of the city's founding myth, Romulus, Remus, and that suspiciously maternal wolf. The crowd cheers as he mimics sword fights, his voice booming against the stone walls. You drop a coin into his bowl, earning a nod of approval. Entertainment here comes cheap, but passion doesn't. You turn a corner and find yourself nose to chest with a Roman guard. His armor glints like polished bone. His expression says, "Don't test me." You nod politely. He squints at your toga, mutters something about provincials, and moves on. Apparently, your folding technique continues to betray you. The sun climbs, and so does the temperature. Romans love public fountains, and for good reason. You join a small line to scoop water from a nymphaeum, a beautifully carved stone basin fed by the aqueducts. The water runs cold and clear, gurgling like laughter. It's one of the city's great engineering marvels, gravity-fed streams carrying fresh water across miles of countryside. A man next to you proudly declares that the aqueducts are Rome's veins, feeding the empire's heart. You nod, because that's actually a beautiful metaphor, and also because you're busy splashing your face. A fringe tidbit for you. Some Romans believed tossing a coin into running water could charm the local spirits. You quietly flick one in, hoping it buys you both luck and less body odor. Nearby, a scribe sits with a wax tablet, taking dictation from a customer. His stylus clicks like a metronome. Writing in Rome isn't easy. Papyrus is expensive, and literacy, though admired, isn't universal. You overhear him drafting a letter, complaints about rent, taxes, and an unreliable cousin. The more things change, the more they stay the same.
As you wander toward the edge of the market, you catch sight of a woman painting a wall with red ochre. She's an artist of sorts, decorating a tavern's facade with scenes of grapes, gods, and a very tipsy Bacchus. You pause, watching the colors bloom under her hand. She glances at you and says, "We paint what we can't afford to live." You laugh softly, realizing sarcasm transcends time. Hunger gnaws again. You approach a food stall, its surface littered with terracotta bowls and a small brazier sizzling with something suspiciously gray. The vendor, round, sweaty, smiling, offers you a ladleful of pulse, Rome's favorite street food, a porridge of barley, herbs, and whatever's left over. You take a bite. It's fine. Grainy, a little smoky, and vaguely comforting. The vendor beams. You're officially eating like a plebeian. He tells you, proudly, that the rich eat flamingo tongues and stuffed dormice. You nod politely and decide pulse is perfect. As the morning stretches on, you notice how every inch of Rome is alive with trade. Potters stack jars, weavers hang dyed cloth from balconies, and children chase each other with sticks pretending to be swords. Every shout, every laugh, every deal struck adds to the symphony. This is how empires sound, not like marching armies, but like haggling, hammering, and human heartbeats echoing off stone. At one corner, you find a small shrine covered in flowers and coins. A man stops, whispers a prayer, and touches the statue's base before continuing. You do the same, though you're not sure which god you've just spoken to. With over 1,000 deities floating around, it's safer to hedge your bets.
Historians still argue whether Rome's gods reflected its strength or its insecurity. Did the people truly believe Jupiter watched them, or did they just hope someone was keeping score? By noon, the city's rhythm slows. The heat presses down like a hand. You find refuge under a shaded awning where a barber plies his trade. He's trimming a client's beard with a knife that looks older than democracy. The customer winces, the barber hums. You sit nearby, watching tufts of hair drift like dandelions. The barber catches your eye and says, "You knew?" You nod. He grins. "You'll get used to the smell." A group of children run past, laughing, holding tiny clay masks shaped like theater faces, one smiling, one frowning. Their laughter echoes between walls like a promise that life, however grimy, always finds a way to be joyful. You take one last look around before heading toward the Palatine Hill, where the city's heart beats harder. The smells follow you: fish, fire, flowers, and sweat, all blended into something strangely intoxicating. Rome may not smell good, but it smells alive. You catch yourself smiling, realizing that for all its chaos, this city has you. You've become another pair of feet in the endless rhythm of its streets. And that, in a way, feels like the most Roman thing of all.
You wake to the clatter of bronze plates and the unmistakable smell of something roasting, something expensive. Word has spread. A senator's servant is inviting distinguished guests to a dinner tonight, and by some cosmic joke, your name has made the list. You, the time traveler who can barely wrap a toga. Still, you can't resist. A Roman banquet isn't just a meal, it's a theater of power, gossip, and indigestion. By the time dusk falls, torches flicker along the Via Sacra like molten pearls. You follow the crowd toward a villa perched above the city, its columns glowing gold in the last light. At the gate, servants check invitations written on wax tablets. You hold up the one a cheerful street urchin sold you for 2 coins and a compliment. The doorman squints, shrugs, and waves you in. Apparently, bribes aren't limited to modern times. Inside, the air smells of perfume, real perfume, not garum, and burning laurel leaves. Mosaic floors shimmer with sea creatures, marble statues leer from the corners. A slave bows and offers you a cloth to wipe your hands in scented oil. You comply, pretending you've done this before. The oil feels cool, the scent sharp, like citrus and salt. Rome might stink outside, but here the elite pretend otherwise. The triclinium, or dining room, is a horseshoe-shaped spectacle of couches, cushions, and confidence. The host reclines in the center, an aging man with a tired grin of someone who's both rich and bored. His name, you overhear, is Gaius Petronius, though you're not sure if it's that Petronius, the one historians call arbiter of elegance. If it is, you've lucked into dining with Nero's favorite taste tester, which, if history holds true, won't end well. You recline awkwardly on your left side, copying everyone else. Eating while lying down feels unnatural, but it's the Roman way. Slaves bring trays of fruit, olives, and cheese. A musician plucks a lyre in the corner, each note floating like warm honey. The atmosphere hums with laughter, forced, maybe, but lively. Everyone seems to be talking about the same thing: who's up, who's down, and who's probably about to be executed.
Historians still argue whether Roman banquets were true celebrations or thinly disguised political traps. Tonight, you suspect both. The man beside you, a senator's nephew by his own admission, leans close and whispers, "Always eat what the host eats. If he lives, you live." You laugh, but he doesn't. The first course arrives. Dormice stuffed with herbs and honey, served on tiny silver platters. You hesitate. The senator's nephew nudges you, smirking. You'll offend the gods if you refuse. You take a bite. It's surprisingly good. Crunchy, sweet, a little tragic. You wonder whether this counts as ethical time travel dining. The conversation swirls around you. Talk of the emperor's latest performance, rumors of a new tax on perfume, and a poet arrested for a satirical verse. You realize dinner isn't about food. It's about survival. Every word is calculated, every laugh rehearsed. Even here, surrounded by marble and music, people watch each other's throats like gladiators in silk. A slave refills your cup with Falernian wine, the pride of Roman vineyards. It's syrupy, strong, and probably older than your grandparents. The host raises his goblet, toasting to Jupiter and Rome eternal. Everyone cheers. You follow suit, trying not to slur the Latin. Then comes the show. A dancer enters, barefoot, draped in sheer silk that glows in the lamplight. She moves like smoke, slow and deliberate. The room falls silent. Even the senator's nephew stops bragging. When she finishes, the applause feels half relief, half worship. Rome may conquer continents, but beauty still conquers Rome. A servant sets down the next dish. Roasted peacock, feathers dyed and reattached so it looks ready to strut off the plate. The guests gasp appreciatively. You can't help but whisper, "Overachievers." The woman across from you hears and giggles into her wine. For a moment, you feel almost native.
Then the talk turns darker. Someone jokes about an acquaintance, invited to dine with the emperor and never seen again. Laughter ripples uneasily. The host waves a jeweled hand. Ah, but isn't life sweeter when it trembles? He's quoting Seneca, or mocking him. Hard to tell. Either way, everyone laughs louder than they need to. You join in, but your skin prickles. Between courses, the slaves sweep the floor with fragrant petals to disguise the smell of wine and sweat. You notice one boy flinch when a guest snaps his fingers too sharply. Power here runs on cruelty, refined to elegance. It's not shouted, it's implied. You lean back, dizzy from wine and awareness. The senator's nephew asks about your province. You improvise, claiming you're from far-off lands where the winters bite and the Wi-Fi is terrible. He nods solemnly, clearly mishearing half of it. Ah, the provinces, he sighs. So much barbarian potential. You smile through gritted teeth. The main course arrives, boar stuffed with sausages and figs, surrounded by grapes shaped into little pyramids. You take a careful bite, marveling at the balance of fat and sweetness. A genuine historical fact flickers through your mind. Roman chefs often added crushed pearls or gold flakes to dishes, believing luxury could be eaten. You glance at your plate just in case. Nothing sparkles, probably for the best. As the night deepens, the jokes grow bawdier, the laughter looser. Someone recites scandalous poetry. Someone else faints into their own platter. The host claps once, and dessert appears. Honey cakes shaped like fish, sprinkled with cinnamon. A musician starts a new tune, a melancholic melody that hushes the room. The candles burn low, scenting the air with tallow and dreams. You sip your last wine and glance at the host. His eyes are half closed, but his smile doesn't reach them.
You realize every guest here, no matter how rich, is just as trapped as the slaves serving them. The only difference is comfort. A fringe tidbit. In some Roman feasts, guests hired professional laughers to keep spirits high. You wonder if the man across from you, guffawing at nothing, is one of them, or just drunk enough to qualify. The night ends with applause for no reason at all. You stand to leave, thanking the host in shaky Latin. He studies you for a moment and says, "Remember, stranger, Rome eats all who feed it." Outside, the city has gone quiet. The moon glints on cobblestones, wet from spilled wine and stories. You walk downhill toward the poorer quarters, the laughter still echoing behind you. Your stomach is full, your mind spinning, and somewhere deep down, you know you've just tasted the empire's secret ingredient, power, served warm.
The next morning, your head feels like it's been trampled by a herd of centurions. Roman wine, as you now know, is strong enough to strip paint. You stumble into the street, clutching your temples, when a sudden roar shakes the air. It's not thunder, it's human, thousands of voices rising together like a storm made of lungs. You follow the sound through twisting alleys until the shadow of something colossal falls across you. The Colosseum, the beating, bleeding heart of Rome. Even from outside, it feels alive. The air trembles with chants, horns, and the metallic clink of armor. Vendors line the entrance selling honeyed nuts, sausages, and cheap trinkets shaped like gladiator helmets. You buy one because if you're going to risk your life, you might as well have a souvenir. Historians still argue whether entry to the games was truly free. Technically, it was, sponsored by emperors to win favor, but somehow the best seats always went to the powerful. You, of course, end up in the nosebleed section, sitting between a farmer eating dried figs and a child waving a wooden sword. The child grins at you, missing 2 front teeth. "Panem et circenses," he shouts. "Bread and circuses," the Roman version of "let's go." The crowd surges as a trumpet blares. Beneath you, the arena floor gleams like gold dust. You can smell the sand, sharp with iron. The first event is about to start. A gate opens. A man steps out, bare-chested, muscles carved like marble. He raises his sword to the crowd, who erupt as though Jupiter himself just dropped by. Another gate creaks. Out trots a lion, golden, furious, very real. The man's expression doesn't change. Yours absolutely does. You glance at the farmer beside you. He's cheering with both hands raised, spitting fig seeds as he yells, "Show him courage!" You murmur, "Show him the exit." The lion lunges. The man dodges, rolling in the sand, then strikes. For a heartbeat, everything stills. The beast collapses, dust rising around them like incense. The crowd explodes. People throw wreaths, coins, even jewelry into the arena. The man bows. You realize the games are less about death and more about theater, the careful choreography of survival. Still, not everyone gets the encore. Next, a team of gladiators enters, faces hidden by visored helmets. They're grouped by type: retieri with nets and tridents, supputores with short swords and shields, murmillos with heavy armor that gleams like fish scales. It's like watching an ancient, blood-soaked version of mixed martial arts. The referee, yes, there's a referee, steps forward with a wand to signal fairness, though fairness seems relative when someone's wearing 30 pounds of metal. The crowd knows every move, every stance. They shout advice, place bets, and boo when a fighter shows hesitation. You can't help but be swept up in it. The tension, the rhythm, the sound of blades kissing shields. You even find yourself cheering once or twice, though mostly for the underdog. Historians still debate how often gladiators actually died in combat. The romanticized version says always, but evidence suggests most fights ended before fatal blows.
because good fighters were investments. You imagine the owner's logic. Better to keep your prize warrior alive for next week's show than to clean him off the sand tonight.
Still, accidents happen. You see one, quick, silent, horrifying. The sword slides between armor plates. The crowd gasps, then cheers. A hand goes up from the fallen man, trembling. The victor looks to the emperor's box for the famous signal, thumb up or thumb down. Turns out the Hollywood version lies. Thumbs down didn't mean death. It was likely thumbs up or a horizontal motion that did. Scholars still bicker over the details, but you're too stunned to care. The signal comes, the crowd roars, a swift blade, silence, then thunder. You exhale slowly, realizing your hands are shaking. You look around. People are crying, laughing, embracing strangers. It's not cruelty, it's catharsis. Rome's power is built on spectacle, and today the empire feeds on adrenaline. Between events, vendors weave through the stands shouting about dates, pastries, and fresh goat water, which you decline on principle. A drunk senator behind you lectures his companion about the moral purity of the games while spilling wine on his toga. Irony hasn't been invented yet, but it's thriving. The next act surprises you. Instead of men, a procession of exotic animals floods the arena. Bears, elephants, panthers. The crowd gasps. Rome's might isn't just military, it's zoological. Conquered lands mean imported wonders. You watch handlers guide an ostrich with a golden ribbon tied around its neck. The crowd laughs. You remember a strange fact. Emperor Commodus once killed an ostrich in the arena, then waved its severed head at the senators as a joke. Ancient stand-up comedy at its darkest. A shadow passes above. You look up. A canopy of colored cloth, the velarium, billows gently, shading the stands. Slaves pull ropes from towers to adjust it. The engineering is staggering, and you realize this isn't chaos, it's organized frenzy, a ritual of order disguised as violence.
The afternoon bleeds into evening, the final act, a mock naval battle. The arena floor floods with water, shimmering under torchlight. Small ships crash, rowed by convicts promised freedom if they survive. You can't tell if they believe it. The crowd chants louder than the drums. One ship splinters, men fall. The water darkens. A flock of gulls descends, screaming. It's breathtaking and sickening all at once. You close your eyes, the sound of cheering still rattling your ribs. You think of last night's feast, the gold, the laughter, the performance of power. And now this, the raw, sand-slick display of it. Rome doesn't just rule the world, it demands applause while doing it. As you leave, the stand's empty, like a dream draining away. The ground outside is littered with crumbs, coins, and lost sandals. The city hums, drunk on adrenaline and wine. A beggar kneels by the gate, muttering prayers for the dead. You drop a coin into his palm. He looks up and says, "You'll come again." You want to say no, but something in you knows he's right. Rome always brings its audience back.
You step into the fog of steam like it's a time portal within a time portal. The Roman bathhouse is louder than you expect. Voices bouncing off marble walls, the splash of basins, the hiss of water poured from copper kettles. You thought you were just coming here to wash off the grime of the Subura, but you're about to learn this is where Rome really cleanses its conscience, or at least tries to. The air is thick with heat and something vaguely herbal. Men of every status swirl around you, wrapped in towels or nothing at all, discussing politics, gladiator stats, and who poisoned whom last night.
Slaves dart between them with oil flasks and scraping tools, ready to slather or exfoliate anyone who snaps their fingers. You try not to stare at the sheer variety of body types. There's something democratic about it. Senators and bakers sweating side by side. But then you realize the senator's slave is massaging his back, and democracy wilts like a damp sponge. You shuffle toward the apoditarium, the changing room clutching your borrowed strigil. Coins jingle in your tunic. A boy eyes them immediately. Welcome to the first locker room theft in history. The Romans even had signs warning bathers to beware of pickpockets. Proof that not even luxury was safe from opportunism. Then comes the rhythm of cleansing. Warm bath, hot bath, cold bath. Tepidarium, caldidarium, frigidarium. You move like an unsure tourist in a spa with too many rules. The steam hits your face, opening pores you didn't know you had. Your lungs tighten, your skin tingles. A slave gestures. Time for the scraping. The blunt bronze tool drags along your arm, peeling off sweat, oil, and dirt. It's oddly satisfying, like shedding a century of stress.
But bathhouses weren't just for cleaning. They were the ancient internet cafes, networking hubs, and rumor factories rolled into one. Deals were made in whispers between clouds of vapor. Julius Caesar was said to have received military updates here, dripping wet, while senators plotted his downfall in the next pool. Bath gossip traveled faster than any courier. And gossip, like heat, can be dangerous. You overhear a man in a corner muttering about omens in the forum and bad grain from Egypt. The chatter shifts to astrology, a favorite Roman obsession. One merchant claims Mars is in retrograde, and that explains the rising price of olive oil. You almost laugh, realizing how little has changed. Then another bather lowers his voice. He's heard someone scratched a curse into a lead tablet, targeting his rival's business. Ah, the deficciones, Rome's dark little secret. Thin sheets of lead, inscribed with hexes, rolled up and nailed into tombs or wells. People cursed lovers, enemies, even chariot teams. May his horses stumble, says one tablet. May his tongue swell, says another. A few were found in the ruins of Bath, England, centuries later, proving that even far-flung Romans believed their words could twist fate. Historians still argue whether the bathhouses were tolerated temples or tolerated sin. The moralists scolded them, too much leisure, too much nakedness, but emperors loved them. Trajan's baths could host thousands at once, a statement that Rome had mastered water itself. But some argue the lavish aqueduct system strained Rome's resources, the way social media strains ours. Too much flow, too little restraint. A fat man plops beside you, his skin glowing like pink marble. He asks, "First time?" passing a flask of oil. It smells faintly of myrrh and old coins. You nod, too dizzy to refuse. The oil slides over your skin, turning you into a bronze statue. He says, "Remember, you are what you sweat." You think it's philosophy until you realize he's selling oil on the side.
The steam thickens again. Somewhere in the haze, laughter echoes. High-pitched, musical. Women's voices? Impossible, you think. But no, some bathhouses had hours for women too, though always separate. The scandalous Empress Agrippina once demanded to bathe alongside men, causing such outrage that senators nearly had heart attacks in their togas. "Rome is doomed," they cried. Spoiler, it wasn't. At least, not yet. You wander deeper, finding a mosaic under your feet, a sea god with dolphins, his eyes made of green glass. Beneath the tiles, warm air flows from a hypocaust, Rome's version of central heating. Slaves keep fires roaring in the furnace room below, feeding them constantly.
You suddenly imagine their faces in the smoky half-light, sweating far harder than the patrons above. The comfort of the elite rests literally on their burning backs. One man prays silently by the edge of the pool. Another sketches on a wax tablet, perhaps poetry or a complaint letter to the gods. You spot a soldier soaking his bruised arm, humming a tune that sounds like both a lullaby and a war chant. For all its chaos, the bathhouse is also sanctuary, Rome's rare pause button. Yet you sense something uneasy. The sound of dripping water, the flicker of torchlight, everything feels fragile. Maybe it's the humidity, or maybe it's history itself breathing down your neck. Rome builds things to last, but nothing lasts forever. Not even marble.
You lean back against the stone, eyes half closed. Steam curls around you like ghosts of emperors past. Maybe Nero bathed here, plotting arson and art. Maybe a nameless slave once dreamt of freedom in this same spot. The water glimmers gold, reflecting 1,000 unspoken confessions. Someone sneezes. Everyone glares as if the gods themselves have been offended. You chuckle quietly. Even in ancient times, no one liked sharing germs. The sneezer shrugs and mutters a quick, "May Jupiter forgive me." As you leave, a cool breeze greets you at the doorway. Your skin feels alive, your thoughts lighter, but a strange dizziness lingers. You realize it's not the heat. It's the feeling that beneath all the marble and chatter, Rome's soul is sweating too.
You dry off, slip back into your slightly less damp toga, and step onto a sun-bleached street buzzing with laughter and argument. Somewhere on the crowd, someone shouts a woman's name, followed by the word dowry. That's your cue. Love, in ancient Rome, isn't all roses and moonlight. It's contracts, witnesses, and the occasional bribe. A young man passes, clutching a wax tablet. He's blushing. You catch a glimpse of the inscription, something like, "May Venus favor my petition." You assume he's writing poetry. Wrong. He's negotiating a marriage. In this world, affection and accounting are twin gods. If you were hoping for candlelit serenades, you're centuries early. Here, love begins with family meetings and legal scrolls. Roman marriages weren't sealed by romance, but by consensus, between fathers, naturally. A daughter might never even meet her husband until the ceremony. That said, Roman women were far from powerless. In elite circles, they could own property, run businesses, even divorce their husbands by sending back the house keys. Imagine the breakup texts of that era. "Dear Gaius, I am reclaiming my dowry. May your next dinner be burnt." Still, beneath all the contracts, there's tenderness. You wander into a garden where lovers have carved graffiti into marble. "Secundus loves Prima forever," one reads. Forever, you think, lasted until the next plague or the next soldier marched away. But there's something touching in those scratch declarations, proof that even in a world obsessed with status, hearts still rebelled.
You pass a group of matrons gossiping near a fountain. Their veils flutter in the breeze like banners of subtle defiance. One whispers that her friend's husband has been seeing an actress, taboo though entirely predictable. Another sighs that her astrologer predicted passion under the sign of Mars. You pretend to study the water, but your ears are wide open. Historians still argue whether Roman marriage was an equal partnership or a polite form of captivity. The truth likely flowed somewhere between, depending on wealth and temperament. But here's a fact. Roman law allowed women to initiate divorce centuries before many modern nations would. Some took full advantage, like Julia, the daughter of Emperor Augustus, who famously went through so many lovers and scandals that her father finally exiled her to an island. When asked what she missed most, she supposedly said, "The noise of the city." That noise follows you now, the clang of bronze, the call of vendors, the murmur of flirtation.
A group of young men loiter near a perfume stall, pretending to browse. The vendor smirks. She knows a pretext when she sees one. Roman perfume, by the way, isn't subtle. It hits you like a floral brick. Rose oil, spikenard, and the faint earthy tang of myrrh. The kind of scent that announces love before love arrives. Then from a nearby archway, laughter. A woman in a crimson stola catches your eye and winks. You're fairly sure it's not because you're charming. More likely she's a meretrix, a licensed courtesan. In Rome, even intimacy is regulated. These women register with magistrates, pay taxes, and are technically free in a way married women aren't. The irony's hard to miss. Love in Rome operates on paperwork and performance both. You stroll down a side street toward a tavern rumored to host poets and broken hearts alike. Inside, lamplight flickers on plaster walls painted with scandalous murals. Aphrodite, Mars, a few poses that would make modern romance novels blush. Musicians hum a slow tune on double flutes. Two lovers argue in whispers near a jug of Falernian wine. You catch fragments. You swore by Venus. You spent my ring money on dice. Some things never change.
In the corner sits an older philosopher, dictating to a scribe about the nature of desire. Love, he says solemnly, is a form of madness granted by the gods to remind mortals that reason is overrated. The scribe nods dutifully, though you suspect he's secretly in love with someone too, maybe even the philosopher's wife. You order a cup of wine, diluted, as Romans prefer it, and lean back to watch the theater of affection unfold. A soldier toasts his sweetheart before shipping off to Germania. A woman fingers a tiny gold ring, lost in thought. That ring, you recall, isn't just jewelry. For Romans, it's a miniature contract worn on the left hand because they believed a vein ran directly to the heart. Sweet, poetic, and completely wrong anatomically, but charming nonetheless. Outside again, the afternoon sun paints everything in gold. You pass by a small shrine to Venus. Offerings crowd the base, shells, coins, wilted flowers. Someone's left a tiny clay figurine shaped like a heart, cracked down the middle. You smile, wondering whether it's an offering or a warning. As night falls, the city softens. Couples stroll beneath the torchlight, their shadows merging against the walls. You catch snippets of poetry from somewhere above. A woman on a balcony reciting verses of Ovid, the great poet of love and scandal. His words drift down like silk. Love is a game that even the wise must lose. You wonder if he's right, or if he just lost spectacularly often. A street performer begins to sing, a love ballad that somehow turns into a satire halfway through. The crowd laughs. In Rome, love is entertainment, politics, and danger all at once. The performer winks at you. "Careful, traveler," he says. "Falling in love here can cost more than your denarii." You toss him a coin anyway. And then, just as you're about to call it a night, you glimpse something strange. A man and woman clasping hands before a small crowd, each declaring their loyalty aloud. No priest, no contract, no dowry, just words and witnesses. It's not official, but it's real. The Romans call it concubinatus, a partnership outside the law, yet bound by affection. The empire might have its rules, but love, it seems, keeps finding loopholes.
You wake to the sound of drums, low, steady, and impossible to ignore. Somewhere in the distance, temple bells answer like a chorus of metal voices. Today, you're going to learn about Rome's most volatile citizens, its gods. You follow the crowd flowing uphill toward the Capitoline Hill, where the great temple to Jupiter looms against the morning sky. The air smells of smoke and salt. A priest sprinkles water on the steps, chanting in Latin so ancient it's practically a fossil. You try to blend in, clutching your borrowed coin for offering. Someone elbows you and mutters, "Don't stare at the augurs." You look anyway. The augurs stand in their embroidered robes, staffs raised toward the heavens, watching birds circle above the forum. Yes, birds. In Rome, the will of the gods is read in wing patterns, droppings, and flight direction. Historians still argue whether these rituals were genuine faith or elaborate political theater, but either way, they ruled daily life. A bad omen could cancel a Senate meeting or a wedding. You imagine modern city councils stopping work because a pigeon flew left instead of right. Rome somehow made superstition bureaucratic. You edge closer to the temple steps. Inside, incense burns thick enough to sting your eyes. Priests in crimson-trimmed tunics move like shadows through the haze, carrying bowls of blood from freshly sacrificed bulls. The sound is strangely beautiful and unsettling all at once, the mingling of devotion and dread. A whisper runs through the crowd. The consul himself is here to dedicate an offering before battle.
And you, the time traveler, are standing close enough to see the knife. It flashes once, quick and professional. The crowd gasps, then cheers. The priest smears a line of blood across the consul's forehead, a sign of purification. You realize the symbolism, violence cleansed through ritual. It's both horrifying and poetic, a theme Rome never tires of. A priest catches you watching. "Traveler," he says. His Latin is precise, his stares sharper than the blade. "Have you given thanks today?" You fumble with your coin and drop it into the altar fire. The flames leap greedily, and the priest nods. "The gods see your fear," he says. That's a start. Outside again, sunlight feels like forgiveness. But Rome's gods are everywhere. You can't escape them. Every street corner, every doorway hides a small shrine, smeared with oil and wine. People mutter prayers to household spirits called lares and penates, before eating, before sleeping, before gossiping. Even the simplest acts are negotiations with invisible forces. You sip from a public fountain and feel mildly guilty for not dedicating it to Neptune first. You follow a winding path toward the river, where a small crowd has gathered around a statue of Isis, the Egyptian goddess who somehow charmed Rome. Her temple smells of lotus and cinnamon, her followers dressed in linen instead of wool. They chant in a rhythm foreign and hypnotic. Rome has conquered the world, but the world has quietly conquered Rome's faith. Imported gods, Mithras from Persia, Isis from Egypt, Cybele from Anatolia, each promise something the old Roman pantheon can't. Intimacy, personal salvation, hope beyond politics.
A sailor beside you crosses his chest with a gesture that hasn't even been invented yet. "She listens," he whispers, "unlike Jupiter." Historians still argue whether the spread of mystery religions weakened Rome or simply reflected its anxiety. When life feels uncertain, when emperors are assassinated before dessert, people start craving new gods with better customer service. You keep walking, drawn by the scent of roasted grain and incense. At another temple, this one for Vesta, the sacred flame flickers. The Vestal virgins tended with quiet grace, their white veils glowing in the dim light. Their job is simple: keep the flame alive. If it dies, Rome dies. No pressure. You watch one girl, barely 15, add oil to the lamp. Her hands tremble slightly. You wonder what she's thinking, whether she dreams of love
or fears the punishment for breaking her vow, which involves being buried alive. Rome's piety is not gentle. Later, you duck into a tavern to escape the heat. Two merchants argue over whether Mercury or Fortuna deserves credit for their last business success. Fortuna gives, one insists. Mercury takes, the other shoots back. The bartender rolls his eyes. Pay first, pray later, he mutters. A small boy runs in carrying a basket of clay figurines. Protective idols, he shouts. Buy one, curse-free guarantee. You almost laugh. Religion as marketing. Some things really never change. You buy a tiny figurine of Jupiter anyway, mostly because it's adorable. That night, you attend a private household ritual, an invitation you didn't ask for but can't refuse. The host, a wealthy matron, lights candles in front of her family shrine. The faces of her ancestors are painted on wooden plaques, watching silently as she pours wine on the floor for them. The air hums with devotion and a strange tenderness. She glances at you. She looks at you and says softly, "The dead keep us honest." You nod, not entirely sure if she means that literally.
Then she lowers her voice. But sometimes, she continues, they need reminding who's in charge. From beneath the altar, she pulls a small bronze box. Inside, amulets, wax dolls, hair strands. My husband's mistress, she says with a shrug. The spell just keeps her quiet. You swallow hard. You remember the curse tablets from the baths, the words of desperation hammered into metal. Magic here isn't superstition, it's survival. Even the most pious Romans hedged their bets. Offer to Jupiter, bribe Mercury, curse your enemies, just in case. As you leave her villa, you glance back once more at the flickering light inside. It's strangely beautiful, this world of overlapping faiths, half ritual, half insurance policy. Rome doesn't worship gods so much as negotiate with them, daily, feverishly, like clients with divine lawyers. The drums return somewhere in the distance. You look up at the sky, violet streaked with smoke, and wonder whether any of those gods ever look back.
The next morning, the streets hum with a peculiar energy, half celebration, half surveillance. Imperial banners hang from balconies, the red fabric rippling like open veins. You don't know it yet, but you've stepped into one of Rome's most carefully managed illusions, the golden age of Augustus. You'd heard of him, of course, Julius Caesar's adopted son, the man who ended a century of civil war. But walking his city is another thing entirely. Every brick seems to whisper his name. Temples gleam with new marble. Roads run straighter than ever. And yet the air feels rehearsed. Even the pigeons seem on message. You join the crowd outside the Ara Pacis, the altar of peace, where a priest is reciting a hymn to Augustus's glory. The sun reflects off the white stone, nearly blinding. Children scatter rose petals, while their parents cheer on cue. A man beside you leans over and mutters, "Peace through exhaustion, that's what it is." He smiles tightly, then claps like everyone else. You clap too, because not clapping might get you noticed, and in this Rome, being noticed can be fatal. You stroll toward the Forum, passing statues of the emperor everywhere, young, idealized, immortal. You've never seen propaganda this beautiful. Rome calls it art. The poet Horace calls it stability. You call it a masterclass in optics. Augustus has turned politics into religion and himself its high priest. A public announcement rings out. Something about new moral laws. You pause to listen. Adultery, apparently, will now be punished severely, even among the elite.
You suppress a smirk, remembering Augusta's daughter Julia from last night's gossip. She must be thrilled. A fruit seller nearby grumbles, "He wants us to live like statues." Another adds, "At least statues don't pay taxes." You decide not to laugh too loud.
You wander past a new marble facade, the kind of construction that makes modern urban planners sweat. It's part of Augustus's boast. "I found Rome a city of brick and left it of marble." It's impressive, no doubt, but also strategic. The emperor's building frenzy isn't just about beauty, it's about permanence. He's rewriting memory in stone. And yet, beneath the gleam, you sense fear. A senator walks briskly by, eyes fixed on the ground. You overhear whispers about exiles, poets, philosophers, even old comrades of Augustus who fell out of favor. You recall Ovid, banished for writing The Art of Love. Official reason? A poem and a mistake. The real reason? Historians still argue, but it probably involved a scandal too close to the emperor's family. In a city obsessed with control, poetry becomes rebellion. You duck into a shaded portico to escape the heat. Two men argue over whether Augustus is truly a god or just a man playing dress-up with thunderbolts. "He brought peace," one insists. "He brought censorship," the other retorts. You sip your watered wine and stay silent. The truth, like the wine, is diluted here. A woman selling laurel wreaths catches your eye. She says softly, "The emperor's name means the revered one, but the old name was Octavian. Never forget that." You nod. History, she seems to imply, is just marketing with better lighting. Further down the avenue, you pass a massive sundial built from an Egyptian obelisk, a literal monument to time and empire. Its shadow creeps across the stones, marking the hours as citizens scurry beneath. You wonder how many realize the irony. Even time itself now bows to Augustus.
A patrol of soldiers passes. Their armor gleams, their movements synchronized. Order incarnate. But on the periphery, a beggar mutters prayers to forgotten gods. A slave sweeps dust near the temple steps, unnoticed. Rome looks eternal, but you see its fractures, thin, hairline cracks beneath the marble skin. You wander toward the Tiber, where the noise fades. Across the water stands a villa belonging to Livia, Augustus's wife, sharp-minded, serene, and rumored to be the quiet power behind the throne. Some say she poisoned rivals with figs dipped in venom. Others say she simply outthought them. Historians still argue whether Livia was a political genius or a villain sculpted by gossip. You suspect both can be true. In a nearby tavern, conversation turns to omens again. A merchant swears a comet appeared the night Caesar died, marking his ascent to godhood. Another insists it reappeared for Augustus too. The barman snorts. "Of course it did," he says. "Comets always appear when the emperor needs better press." You raise your cup. "To cosmic timing," you say. Night falls, and you follow the sound of distant flutes to a private garden where the emperor's elite gather. The wine flows like the Tiber, the air scented with myrtle and ambition. You listen as poets recite verses praising the Pax Romana, the peace of Rome, but their eyes dart nervously toward the guards. You realize peace here isn't the absence of war, it's the silence of fear.
You slip away before someone asks your name. On your walk back through the city, you pass a wall carved with a single phrase, Roma Eternum, eternal Rome. The letters glow faintly in torchlight, but a chunk of plaster has already fallen away.
You can't help but smile at the irony. Even eternity needs maintenance. As you climb the Palatine Hill for one last look, the city sprawls below, temples shining, streets alive, the hum of 1,000,000 souls pretending everything will stay this way forever. Augustus's Rome is magnificent, yes, but it's also haunted by its own perfection. You whisper to yourself, golden ages never warn you when they end.
You wake to whispers. The palace district smells of roses and iron. Servants glide past in sandals that barely whisper against the floor, their faces arranged into masks of obedience. Welcome to the Palatine Hill, the beating, paranoid heart of Rome. You shouldn't be here, but time travel is rarely polite about boundaries. Above you, marble corridors stretch like arteries, feeding chambers of power and poison. Somewhere behind one of those doors, the emperor dines. You're not sure which emperor, Augustus, Tiberius, maybe Nero, but by now you've learned they all share one defining trait. They trust no one. You sneak along a colonnade until you glimpse a dining hall aglow with lamplight. Reclining couches line the walls, guests draped in silks that cost more than small houses. The air hums with tension and perfume. At the center, the emperor lifts a cup of wine, pausing just long enough to make every throat tighten. A taster leans in, sips, and waits. 1 heartbeat. 2. Still breathing, the emperor drinks. Conversation resumes. So this is how Rome's rulers dine, suspicion garnished with honeyed dates. The rumor mill in the baths had warned you about this. Poison, it seems, is Rome's favorite condiment. Mushrooms, figs, even perfume can kill if prepared creatively enough. Livia's infamous figs come to mind, though historians still argue whether she truly poisoned anyone or simply benefited from convenient timing. Either way, being a Roman emperor's relative is statistically hazardous. You edge closer, pretending to be a servant. The emperor, let's call him Tiberius for now, leans to an advisor. The stars, he murmurs, warn me of betrayal. The advisor nods solemnly, eyes down. Somewhere a flute plays, too softly to disguise the sound of someone being nervous.
The meal proceeds in layers. Peacock tongues, dormice stuffed with nuts and honey, flamingo wings. You try not to imagine where they find the flamingos. A poet at the end of the couch recites verses, praising the emperor's virtue, his voice trembling on each compliment. You suspect sincerity isn't the goal. Survival is. Then laughter ripples through the room. Someone has made a daring joke about senators being as useful as marble pigeons. The emperor chuckles, then suddenly stops. The silence that follows could slice marble. The joker pales. But after a long, excruciating pause, the emperor laughs again, louder this time. Everyone exhales at once. You swear the air temperature rises by 10 degrees. You realize this isn't a dinner. It's a performance. Every gesture, every glance is choreography. Power here is theater. Loyalty is costume. And behind the curtain lurks Rome's real dark secret. The Praetorian Guard, the emperor's personal bodyguards, who also happen to be the empire's best assassins when the mood shifts. You spot 2 of them now, lean and in plain tunics, eyes tucking the crowd like hawks. One of them watches you a moment too long. You look away, pretending fascination with the mosaic floor. Neptune rides a seahorse across waves of blue glass. You imagine how many have stared at that same image moments before exile, or worse. Later, the feast dissolves into shadow. Musicians pack up. Courtiers vanish like ghosts. You slip into a side corridor where torchlight flickers unevenly. The scent of myrrh fades into something metallic. At the far end, a bronze door stands half open. Inside, a smaller, darker chamber, walls lined with scrolls and wax tablets. The Emperor's private archive.
You shouldn't, but curiosity wins. You step inside. On one table lies a list. Names neatly inked, some crossed out. Conspirators, the heading reads. You scan the column and recognize a few poets, a senator or two, and your stomach sinks. A servant from tonight's dinner. So this is how empire preserves itself, through elegant handwriting and quiet deletions. A sudden creak. You freeze. A servant enters, eyes wide. He mistakes you for someone else. Another message from Sejanus, my lord, he whispers. You nod vaguely, praying he leaves. He bows and retreats. You exhale only when his footsteps fade. Sejanus, Tiberius's powerful prefect, the man who ruled Rome in the emperor's absence and eventually learned that power borrowed is power lost. Historians still debate whether Sejanus plotted rebellion or simply became too popular for comfort. Either way, the outcome was identical. Public execution, statues smashed, his family erased from records. You slip out, heart pounding. Outside, the moon hangs low over the forum, reflecting off rooftops like a watchful eye. Somewhere below, the common people sleep, dreaming of bread and games. Up here, dreams are dangerous. As you descend the hill, you hear faint singing from a villa nearby, a woman's voice, lilting and melancholy. The words drift on the wind. Fortune favors the bold, but spares none. You shiver. Maybe it's just a song. Maybe it's a warning.
At the base of the Palatine, a guard patrol passes, dragging a man between them. His hands are bound, his tunic torn. You catch a glimpse of a wax tablet falling from his belt. On it, a poem. You don't need to read Latin to know how it ends. Rome's brilliance, you realize, isn't just in its architecture or armies. It's in its ability to turn fear into art, suspicion into ceremony. The empire glows not because it's pure, but because it burns so many to stay bright. By dawn, the palace hill is silent again. Birds sing as if nothing happened. Somewhere inside those marble walls, another toast is being raised. To loyalty, to peace, to survival. You know better now. In Rome, all three are negotiable. You glance once more at the city below, the temples, the baths, the sleeping markets, and whisper, no wonder the gods went silent.
Morning fog clings to the rooftops as you follow a narrow stairway downward, leaving behind marble facades and perfumed courtyards. The air thickens, hotter, denser, carrying the smell of sweat, smoke, and spilled wine. You've reached the Subera, the beating, filthy heart of Rome's underbelly. Here, the empire's grandeur drains into its gutters. Every step feels like peeling back a layer of the city's disguise. The wide streets of the Forum shrink into cramped alleys where laundry lines sag like tired flags. Clay lamps burn low, their smoke curling between the stacked tenements. Above you, children's faces peer through lattice windows. Below, rats skitter past puddles, reflecting the morning light like shards of broken glass. This is the district respectable Romans pretend doesn't exist. I've a bakers, beggars, thieves, and philosophers without patrons. Servitors pass through only when disguised. Soldiers only in groups. Yet somehow this chaos hums with life far more honest than anything atop the Palatine Hill. A woman calls out from a stall, waving figs the size of fists. She shouts, sweet as Venus, cheap as virtue. You almost laugh, but then you see the desperation behind her grin. Business here isn't commerce. It's survival with a sense of humor. You turn a corner and stumble upon a tavern with no sign, only the faint smell of vinegar and roasted garlic. Inside, smoke curls from oil lamps that have seen more arguments than daylight. The owner, a broad man with one good eye, eyes you warily but gestures toward a bench.
You sit, and instantly the room swallows you. A dice game rattles in the corner. Two men argue in hushed tones about politics they barely understand. And at another table a thin woman with ink-stained fingers scratches lines of poetry onto a wax tablet, her lips moving silently. "Name's Marcia," she says without looking up. "You don't look like a local." You admit you're just passing through, which earns a dry laugh. "Aren't we all?" she mutters. "Watch your purse, traveler. The Subura eats slower than the lions, but it still eats." A serving boy brings you watered wine, thin but mercifully clean. The walls sweat moisture. The floor is an uneven mosaic of spilled dreams, and yet there's warmth here, something alive that marble never manages. Outside, a brawl erupts, shouts, the clatter of clay jars, a flash of steel. The tavern keeper sighs, not even glancing up. "Early today," he says. "Usually they wait until noon." You step to the door and watch. Two young men, barefoot, wild-eyed, are fighting over a stolen loaf of bread. The crowd gathers instantly, cheering not out of malice, but boredom. A toothless woman cackles, "Ain't Rome grand?" The bread splits in half, and both men limp away, clutching crumbs. In the shadows, a man in a plain cloak watches quietly. His bearings too stiff, his sandals too fine. When he catches your gaze, he gives the slightest shake of his head. "Stay out of it." You recognize the posture of a Praetorian spy. Even here, under the city's skin, the Empire's eyes never close. You return inside, shaken. Marcia looks up from her tablet. "You're learning," she says. "Down here, justice is whoever has the knife and the nerve to use it."
As the day lengthens, Sapura's rhythm reveals itself. Bakers shout at dawn, smiths at noon, thieves by twilight. The streets transform with the light, merchants by morning, gamblers by dusk, lovers and criminals by nightfall. By afternoon you wander deeper, past a shrine to the household gods, blackened by candle soot. A crippled man kneels nearby, whispering prayers to Mercury, the patron of merchants and thieves alike. You can't tell which one he's asking to become. Nearby, an alley wall is covered in graffiti, crude jokes, love confessions, political insults. One scroll catches your eye: bread for the rich, stones for the poor. Another reads, "Beware the friend who smiles too long." Beneath it, someone has scratched a small fish symbol, an early Christian sign, though few here would recognize it. You pause to listen. Beneath the city's noise, the clatter, the laughter, the brawls, you can hear something deeper. The murmuring pulse of 10,000 people surviving together in defiance of marble and empire. The Subura is more than filth and vice. It's Rome's truest mirror. Night falls fast here. Lamps flicker to life like nervous stars. Somewhere a flute begins to play, soft and mournful. The tune threads through the air, winding between tenements and taverns until it finds you. You follow the sound to a small courtyard where a group of children dance around a broken fountain, their laughter bouncing off the walls. For a moment everything feels human again. Marseille appears beside you, her face half lit by lamplight.
She says, "Funny thing, up there," she gestures toward the distant glow of the Palatine, "they build statues and call it glory. Down here, we breathe and call it lux."
You ask her why she stays. She smiles sadly. Where else would I go? The gods stopped listening up there, but down here, we still pray loud enough they might hear. The flute fades. Somewhere, a baby cries. The smell of smoke thickens as another building burns. Someone's careless lamp, someone else's lost home. No one screams anymore. Fire is as common as rain here. As you watch flames lick the walls, you remember the words carved on a hunger stone centuries later. If you see me, weep. The Sabura never carved its warnings in stone. It wrote them in the air, in soot and song, in the lives of those Rome preferred to forget. You turn back toward the hill, where marble gleams coldly against the night. Up there, emperors drink and plot. Down here, people live, love, and vanish without records. And yet, as the wind shifts, the city hums as one. The noble and the nameless, bound together by firelight and fate. Rome's darkness isn't just cruelty. It's endurance carved into every shadow. You breathe in the city's scent, spice, sweat, and survival, and whisper, maybe this is where Rome's soul actually lives.
You wake to the sound of footsteps, a rhythmic shuffle of sandals against cobblestone, hundreds moving in unison. Dawn seeps into Rome again, and you realize you're standing near a slave market. Wooden pins line the square like animal stalls, except these cages contain people. Some sit slumped in silence, others try to look eager, hoping their smile might raise their price. You hesitate, unsure where to look. A merchant in a red tunic waves a wax tablet, shouting prices with the same tone you'd expect at a cattle auction. "Strong boy, Nubian stock, good with oxen." Another advertises a Greek tutor. Gentle disposition reads poetry. A woman with hollow eyes is listed as Domina Comitatrix, a lady's companion. The euphemism hardly hides the truth. Slavery here isn't rare or hidden. It's Rome's bloodstream. Historians estimate up to 1/3 of the city's population are enslaved. Every triumph brought back new captives. Every villa, every bathhouse, every kitchen ran on hidden labor. You can't take a step in ancient Rome without stepping on someone's freedom. But there's a strange paradox to it. Unlike later slave systems, Rome's isn't entirely permanent. Some slaves buy or earn freedom, becoming freedmen, and many of them rise higher than free-born citizens ever could. It's twisted social alchemy, servitude as the first step toward status. A man approaches you, his robe modest but clean, his hands soft, the hands of someone who's worked his way up. "You look lost, traveler," he says, his accent crisp. "Allow me to hope. I am Tiro, secretary to a senator."
You recognize the name, Cicero's famed freedman, though time seems to have looped oddly here. He smiles when you mention it. "Yes, that Tiro, or one very much like him. They say every great man keeps one like me around, someone who remembers the details he prefers to forget." He guides you through the market, explaining as you go. A slave's value isn't only in muscle, intelligence, loyalty, even beauty. These are currencies. A clever slave might become indispensable, and an indispensable man can become free. You watch as a young boy carves letters into a wax tablet, practicing under his master's gaze. "That one," Tiro says, "will earn freedom before he's 30. He already corrects his master's grammar." Nearby, a woman bargains for a servant. Her tone is brisk, transactional, as if she's haggling for a jar of olive oil. "Too thin," she says. "This one won't survive the harvest." The seller assures her, "Feed him well, and you'll see strong bones." Tiro sighs. The Romans believe everything, even mercy, has a price. He invites you to his domus, his townhouse near the Aventine Hill. Inside, it's smaller than the marble villas of the elite, but still elegant. "All this," he says proudly, "earned after freedom. My former master even dines here sometimes." His laugh carries a trace of bitterness. He says it reminds him of his generosity. You sit beneath a fresco depicting Mercury, god of trade and cunning. "We freedmen owe much to that one," Tiro says, nodding toward the painting. "The god of messages and mischief. He understands how to survive between worlds."
As servants bring bread and watered wine, you ask if he misses his old life. He shakes his head. "You misunderstand. I never stopped serving. I just changed who I serve. Freedom here isn't about chains. It's about leverage." Outside, you hear a commotion. A man shouting, a whip crack, a crowd gathering. You rush to the doorway. A slave has tried to run. 2 guards drag him through the street, his back bleeding, his breath ragged. People watch with mild curiosity, as if it's theater. Tyro's face hardens. "He'll live, barely. They'll mark him with a color now. 'Stop me, I'm a runaway,' it will say. A public label for a private dream." You look away, your stomach twisting. Does anyone help them? He says some try, but most are too afraid. Slavery keeps more than bodies in chains. It shackles compassion, too. As you walk with him later through the streets, he points out the silent signals of servitude. The porter who lowers his eyes too fast, the girl carrying amphorae twice her weight, the mosaic depicting chained Africans at a bathhouse entrance, art as domination disguised as declaration. And yet, Rome's hypocrisy runs deeper. Some freedmen, once slaves themselves, now own slaves. It's a brutal cycle of imitation. They say freedom makes men generous, but here it only makes them careful not to look weak. You pass a workshop buzzing with energy. Craftsmen, sculptors, painters, all slaves or freedmen. One man carves an intricate statue of Venus, his hands trembling with precision. He's paid nothing, but his master will sell that statue for more than your year's wages. Funny, isn't it? The gods themselves depend on slave labor.
You ask him if there's rebellion brewing. Tyro shrugs. Not here, not in the city. We've seen Spartacus fail. The lesson was clear. Rebellion burns bright, then ends on crosses by the roadside. Now we revolt quietly, by outliving them. A pause. Then he adds, historians still argue whether Rome fell from external attack or internal rot. I think it began here, in these markets, when men learned to measure worth in silver instead of soul. That night, you walk the streets alone, trying to process the empire's contradictions. The hum of Rome softens. The moon paints the cobbles silver. You pass a household shrine where a slave kneels beside his master, both praying to the same God. For a moment, their silhouettes blur, 2 lives touching, unequal but human. You realize that, for all its cruelty, Rome's social machinery is both horrifying and hypnotic, a pyramid built on ambition and fear, maintained by those desperate to climb out of it. Before you part, Tyro presses something into your hand, a small bronze key. He says, "Keep it. In this city, even freedom comes with locks." As he disappears into the shadows, you feel the key's weight, a token of gratitude or a warning. The Suburra had shown you Rome's body. Tyro has shown you its pulse. You glance up toward the Palatine Hill,
where golden lights shimmer. Somewhere, an emperor sleeps soundly, dreaming of divine order. Down here, millions dream of escape. And for the first time, you understand that Rome's greatness wasn't marble. It was endurance in spite of it.
The next morning, you wake to an odd smell, sharp, metallic, and faintly sweet. You follow it through twisting alleys until you reach a dim workshop tucked behind a butcher's stall. Inside, oil lamps flicker over strange instruments, bronze scalpels, bone saws, glass vials filled with something that looks suspiciously like pickled organs. "Ah," says a man in a stained tunic, "another volunteer." You take an uneasy step back. He chuckles. "Relax, I'm no torturer. I'm a medicus. Doctor, if you prefer the Latin that earns more coin." He introduces himself as Gaius, a physician trained in Alexandria, where medicine blends science and superstition in equal measure. You glance around the room. Scrolls lie open on tables, Hippocrates, Galen, and fragments of Egyptian lore copied by unsteady hands. In a corner, a young apprentice carefully dissects what appears to be a monkey. "To understand men," he says, "we must first understand beasts. Easier to get their consent, too." His humor is dark, his logic darker. Yet he moves with precision, his hands confident as he mixes crushed herbs and powders in a mortar. He explains, "We Romans believe the body is ruled by 4 humors," tapping his fingers: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, black bile. Balance them, and a man thrives. Disturb them, and you have half my business. You peer into his concoction, a greenish paste that bubbles faintly. "That's for burns," he says. "Made from vinegar, ash, and honey. Works better than prayer most days, though prayer does help with the pain." He invites you to watch a patient consultation. A soldier limps in, his legs swollen and dark. Gaius inspects it, nodding sagely. "An imbalance of humors caused by swamp air," he declares, then promptly lances the wound. You nearly gag, but Gaius hums contentedly, applying a compress of wine and spiderwebs. "Keeps infection out," he says, or invites it, depending on the spider. Historians still argue whether Roman medicine was primitive or pioneering. On one hand, they understood anatomy surprisingly well, thanks to battlefield necessity and, occasionally, very illegal human dissection. On the other, they believed toothaches were caused by worms and migraines by demons sulking behind the eyes. You follow Gaius into his back room, where shelves overflow with charms, herbs, and small lead tablets etched with curses. "Ah, the other half of my practice. Healing's profitable, but cursing, that's where the money is." He picks up one tablet, squinting at the tiny writing. "Lucius owes me 3 denarii. May his tongue rot until he pays." He grins. "A client's request. I buried this under the Circus Maximus last week. Let's see if Lucius cuffs up soon." Curses, defecciones, were Rome's dark little secret. Ordinary people, even respectable ones, used them to settle debts, win lovers, or sabotage rivals. The tablets were folded, nailed shut, then dropped into wells, graves, or sanctuaries. Archaeologists have found thousands, many still unreadable, their Latin scratched in frantic handwriting.
Some even write them backward, Gaius notes, to confuse the spirits. Others add hair or fingernails of the victim. Works faster, they say. You ask whether he truly believes in their power? He smirks. Belief is irrelevant. Fear works better than magic. And fear, my friend, pays in silver.
As the day wears on, Gaius invites you to accompany him to the temple of Asclepius on Tiber Island, Rome's version of a hospital. Pilgrims lie in rows under open colonnades, murmuring prayers to the god of healing. Snakes slither lazily near the altars, holy symbols of regeneration. You instinctively step back. Don't worry, Gaia says, they're sacred, mostly. Priests glide among the sick, chanting while applying herbal salves or placing small clay models of body parts beside the afflicted, legs, eyes, hearts. These votive offerings symbolize what they hope to heal. It's part medicine, part theater, and fully faith. A woman sobs beside you, clutching a wax effigy of her child. Gaius kneels to whisper a blessing. His tone softens. Hope, he tells you later, is the only cure that works, even when it doesn't. That evening, curiosity pulls you into another corner of Rome's underworld. The practitioners who aren't doctors at all. Word spreads of a witch, a venefica, who performs miracles for those who dare ask. You find her hut near the Esquiline necropolis, where tombs crowd like crooked teeth. The woman inside is ancient, wrapped in rags, her eyes milky but sharp. The air smells of iron and myrrh. You seek knowledge, she rasps, or protection. You hesitate. Just curiosity. She laughs, a sound like gravel. That's the most dangerous sickness of all. On her table lie bowls of herbs, amulets shaped like hands and phalluses, and a small clay figure bound in twine. Not all curses are cruel, she says, tracing the figurine. Some bind lovers, some keep monsters away, some remind the gods who's in charge. You notice a jar labeled Crocodilus stercus, crocodile dung. What's that for? Contraception, she says casually. Spread it before passion. Works if you truly believe. She grins at your disgust. Oh, don't look so modern. Every age has its nonsense. Historians still argue whether women like her were outcasts or consultants. Some see them as healers, others as scapegoats. Either way, their craft survives longer than any empire, quiet, adaptable, unkillable. As you leave, the witch presses a charm into your palm, a small bronze coin carved with a serpent. For protection, she whispers. But remember, Rome's greatest curses were written by men in togas, not witches in huts.
You walk back through the twilight city, her words echoing. Rome's science and superstition are two sides of the same coin, one labeled medicine, the other magic. Both seek control over the uncontrollable, pain, chance, fate. Above you, lightning flashes faintly beyond the hills. You imagine the gods watching, amused. Maybe they too toss their curses across the sky, hoping one will stick. As the night deepens, you pass a public fountain. Someone's tossed a curse tablet into its basin. The water ripples around it, catching the lamplight like molten gold. You can't read the words, but you feel the emotion etched into the metal. Jealousy, vengeance, desperation. You whisper to yourself, maybe that's what Rome truly worships, not gods or science, but the illusion of control. A gust of wind blows through the alley, snuffing a lamp. The darkness that follows feels heavier than usual, as if the city itself has heard you. You clutch the bronze charm tighter and keep walking.
You wake one morning to find Rome quieter than usual. No chorus of merchants shouting prices, no smell of fresh bread from the bakeries. Just the faint hum of distant bells and the caw of crows perched on statues that once symbolized victory.
Something in the air has shifted. It's heavier, slower, almost resigned. You wander through the forum, once alive with senators, merchants, and gossiping matrons. Now the marble looks tired, streaked with soot and bird droppings. The fountain trickles weakly. A vendor mutters that the grain ships from Africa are late again. You hear the word fames whispered. Famine. It's hard to believe, but this is Rome at its height, and already its decline. You can sense it in the way people avoid each other's eyes, the way soldiers look underfed, the way every conversation starts with rumors and ends with prayers. In the markets, the price of bread has tripled. People barter jewelry for barley, sandals for scraps. The gods are punishing us, one old man grumbles. Or the Senate's just stealing again, another snaps. You can't tell which sounds more plausible. Historians still argue whether Rome's downfall began with greed or exhaustion. But walking these streets, it feels simpler. Empires rot from the inside before anyone storms the gates. You stop at a tavern where smoke curls lazily from a clay chimney. Inside, the mood is brittle. Patrons speak in low tones, glancing toward the door each time it opens. A soldier at the counter grinds his teeth. We fought in Dacia for gold. Now the coffers are empty and my pay is in promises.
Another man joins in, his tunic patched and threadbare. They say the emperor minted new coins. Silver's thinner than my patience. He tosses a denarius on the counter. It rings dull. Less metal, more hope. You remember learning about this debasement of currency, Rome's silent economic collapse. Each emperor shaved a little more silver from the coin to fund wars and vanity projects. Eventually, the coins looked the same but meant almost nothing. Inflation before the word even existed. Outside, a procession moves past, a mix of priests and commoners carrying incense and small statues. They chant prayers to Jupiter for rain, to Ceres for grain, to Fortuna for mercy. But the sky remains clear, cruelly blue. You follow them to the temple of Jupiter Optimus Maximus, once the empire's heart. The steps are cracked, the gilding faded. Inside, the priests bicker quietly. Someone's stolen the temple's silver urns, they say. Another accuses the guards of bribery. Even the gods, it seems, can't keep their offerings safe anymore. As you leave, a familiar face emerges from the crowd. Tiro, the freedman you met earlier. He looks thinner now, the lines deeper around his eyes. You feel it too, don't you? Something's ending. The poor starve, the rich hide, and the Senate argues about seating arrangements. You ask him what happened. He laughs bitterly. What always happens? Too many emperors, not enough empire. Indeed, the rumor mill grinds endlessly. Generals declaring themselves emperor, provinces rebelling, border legions unpaid and restless. Civil war feels less like a possibility and more like a hobby Rome can't quit. Later that day, you visit the baths of Caracalla, hoping for some comfort in familiarity. But the pools are cold. The furnaces below are silent. A few bathers sit on the steps, discussing omens. An eagle dropped dead near the Senate yesterday, one whispers. It's a sign. Another corrects. No, just poisoned. Everything's poisoned.
You dip your hand into the frigid water. The ripples distort your reflection until your face looks ancient. Maybe Rome itself sees this too, its reflection warped by time, beautiful but broken. A group of children run by, laughing as they toss pebbles. One shouts, "I'm emperor!" Another shouts back, "No, I killed you!" They collapse in giggles, reenacting Rome's political system better than any history book. By twilight, the streets are lined with beggars. Fires flicker in alleys. You pass a mother nursing a baby with nothing but air, her lips cracked from thirst. Nearby, a senator's carriage rolls past, guarded by soldiers. Inside, the noblewoman stares straight ahead, ignoring the outstretched hands. You murmur to yourself, bread and circuses. But no bread left, and the circus burned. A voice answers from behind you. It's Marcia, the poet from the Sabura. She's older now, too, though it's only been months. Time in Rome seems to decay faster than anywhere else. She says, I write elegies now, for the city, not the dead. The dead are lucky. They've escaped taxes. You walk together toward the river. The Tiber runs sluggishly, choked with refuse. The bridges creak underfoot. She gestures toward the skyline. Temples, forums, palaces, all glowing faintly in the dying light. It still looks like eternity, she says softly, but up close, it smells like tomorrow.
A storm brews on the horizon, distant thunder echoing like drums of a foreign army. You imagine the whispers spreading through the empire's borders, Goths crossing the Danube, Persians eyeing the east, Britons restless in the rain. Rome's world is cracking, and the sound travels faster than its messengers. Marcia hands you a small wax tablet. On it, a few lines of her new poem. When marble dreams of dust, the wind remembers names we forget. Rome does not fall, it sighs. You look up, but she's already gone, swallowed by the fog. Historians still argue whether the empire's decline was inevitable. Standing here, it feels less like destiny and more like neglect. The kind that starts small, like a missed tax, a rotting aqueduct, a hungry child. You pass a bakery with a wooden sign, no grain today. Someone has carved beneath it, then no empire tomorrow. The streets darken, thunder rolls closer. You realize you've seen this pattern before, in every civilization that grew too proud to notice its own hunger. Rome doesn't crumble in one blow, it erodes, quietly, grain by grain. You pull your cloak tighter and glance toward the Palatine Hill, where the emperor's palace still gleams under lightning. Somewhere inside, someone is probably giving a speech about eternal glory. But the storm doesn't listen, and neither does time.
Night falls, and with it comes the rain. The first drops strike the ancient stones like tears from a weary sky. You pull your cloak tighter, listening as the thunder swells and the streets turn to rivers. The marble gleams again, not with triumph, but with the slick reflection of torches hurrying through the dark. Rome looks reborn for a moment, until the lightning fades and the illusion dies. You make your way toward the riverbank, the Tiber swollen and angry. Its water beats against the arches of the bridges, carrying branches, broken pottery, and the remnants of yesterday's market stalls. Floods used to be omens in Rome, Jupiter's displeasure or the wrath of the Tiberinus. Now they're just another nuisance in a city that's forgotten how to listen to omens. But as you stop beneath one of the bridges, your torch catches something carved into the stone, a rough inscription you've never noticed before. The letters are Latin, uneven but legible. Si vides hoc, fames est. If you see this, there is famine. It's a warning, half hidden by moss and centuries of grime. You trace it with your fingers, rain washing down your arm. The words feel familiar, echoes of the medieval hunger stones you've studied. But this one is older, forgotten under layers of empire, a Roman hunger stone.
You whisper the phrase again to yourself, the translation sharp as hunger in your mouth. If you see this, there is famine. The realization chills you. The message was carved during a previous drought, when the Tiber ran low enough to expose this part of the wall. Someone, maybe a slave, maybe a priest, had left a warning for the future. And here you are, the future, watching the same cycle repeat.
You sit on the wet stone, staring at the river. Rome, it seems, had its own hunger stones long before the medieval world rediscovers them. The same desperation, the same message carved into permanence as if to outlast the silence of rulers. In that moment, the entire history of empire seems to condense into one truth. Each civilization leaves behind its warnings, carved in languages the next age will only half understand. You imagine the man who carved it. Perhaps he was a dock worker, muscles knotted from hauling grain ships that never arrived. Perhaps he watched his children starve, his prayers unanswered, and decided that if no one would listen to the living, the stones might speak to the unborn. The torch flickers. You notice other carvings, partial phrases, weathered to ghosts of meaning. A date, maybe, a plea, a line that reads, "Aqua non satis est." There is not enough water. The rain intensifies as though mocking the words. You look up at the arches and think of the aqueducts that once brought life to the city. They still stand, some cracked, some overgrown, but fewer fountains flow now. You recall hearing that many aqueducts were sabotaged during wars, their stones repurposed for fortresses and churches. Rome devoured itself, one monument at a time. And still the stones endure. When the storm finally subsides, you climb the Palatine Hill. The city below glimmers with scattered fires, reflections of an empire refusing to sleep. You can hear faint singing from a nearby villa, slurred voices, perhaps soldiers drinking away their pay. Somewhere else, dogs howl at the thunder's echo. The emperor's palace looms ahead, immense and hollow. You find yourself in its courtyard, where rain pools between broken tiles. Once, this space echoed with banquets and applause. Now, your footsteps sound like intrusions. You wander through corridors lined with fading frescoes, scenes of triumphal processions, chariot races, gods offering victory wreaths. But in the torchlight, their painted faces look anxious, as if they too sense what's coming. At the far end of the hall, you find a marble plaque half buried in rubble. The inscription reads, "Roma Eterna," eternal Rome. The irony is almost cruel. You lean against the wall, closing your eyes. The sound of dripping water fills the silence. You think of all the civilizations you've studied, Sumer, Egypt, Greece, and realize they all believed in eternity, and each of them left stones behind to remind the future what hunger feels like. Rome, for all its grandeur, is no different. Its eternity was never in its emperors or armies. It was in its capacity to be remembered. And even now, centuries later, we still speak its name. But memory is not immortality. Memory is the echo of hunger, an echo the stones carry longer than men.
You step back into the open air. The sky is clearing, dawn creeping over the horizon. The city below looks peaceful in that false light. You think of Marcia's poem, "Rome does not fall, it sighs." And suddenly you see how the sigh carries forward through time. The hunger stone in the Tiber whispers to the medieval stonemason by the Elbe. His words whisper to a villager centuries later when the river dries again. And someday, those same words will whisper to you, here in the quiet,
before the dawn of modernity. You walk down the hill slowly, tracing the edges of walls that have survived invasions, earthquakes, and emperors. You realize that what the stones preserve isn't power, it's warning. When the medieval peasants carved, "If you see me, weep," they were repeating the same truth the Romans once knew. Water is not just life, it's prophecy. Every drought reveals a message, every riverbed a mirror. As you reach the forum, the first traders begin to stir. A man opens a stall with nothing to sell. Another sweeps dust from the threshold of a burned-out temple. Rome breathes again, but the breath is shallow. The sun rises, pale and uncertain. You glance once more at the inscription beneath the bridge, half submerged now that the rain has swelled the river. The Latin words blur, but you can still make them out. Si vides hoc, fames est. You whisper it one last time, then turn away, knowing the river will hide it again soon. Maybe for years, maybe for centuries. But the stones will remember. They always do.
The sound of morning traffic hums faintly in your ears, though it takes you a moment to realize it isn't the rattle of Roman chariots anymore. The air smells of exhaust instead of olive oil and ashes. You blink, and the marble colonnades dissolve into glass towers. The Tiber still winds through the heart of the city, but now it's flanked by asphalt, bridges crowded with scooters, and tourists taking selfies where senators once schemed. You're back. Or at least, that's what the calendar on your phone insists. The time machine, whatever bizarre glitch of history spat you here, has done its job. Yet the strange part is how little the city seems to have changed, deep down. The rhythms are the same. People still haggle, complain, flirt, and cheat time. Rome endures, not as empire, but as a habit. You wander along the riverbank, tracing the same path you took that stormy night. There's no flood now. The water slides quietly beneath the bridges. You half expect to see that hunger stone again, but it's long buried beneath centuries of silt and restoration projects. Still, you can almost feel it under your feet, its message pressed against the underbelly of the modern world like a hidden pulse. Si vides hoc, fames est. If you see this, there is famine. The words echo through your mind, more metaphor than warning now. But are they really? You glance at the newsstand near the bridge, headlines about drought in southern Europe, heat waves, failing crops. The same story, retold in plastic and pixels. You can't help but laugh softly. Rome's oldest ghosts still whisper through the cracks of Wi-Fi and marble dust. Historians might debate whether ancient inscriptions were omens or desperation, but standing here, you realize they're both. The past doesn't warn us because it's wise. It warns us because it remembers.
The clatter of footsteps draws your attention. A tour guide waves a small flag, leading a cluster of tourists who shuffle across cobblestones without looking down. Their sneakers tap the same stones where Roman sandals once fell. Beneath those stones lie sewers older than Christianity, bones of merchants and soldiers, and the foundations of temples built atop temples. Layers upon layers of memory, like sedimentary time. You pass a cafe nestled in what was once a bathhouse. A plaque outside reads, Domus of the Nymphaeum, 2nd century A.D. Inside, a barista steams milk where slaves once poured wine. You order an espresso, and when you take the first sip, it's hot and bitter, perfectly Roman. Some things never change. As you sit, you watch the tourists pose for photos near the Pantheon.
They crane their necks at the dome, mouths open, eyes wide. You remember standing there yourself, centuries ago, or hours ago, depending on how time travel decides to behave, and marveling at the oculus where rain and light fell in equal measure. You remember thinking that it felt like the gods were still watching. Maybe they are. A young woman beside you scrolls through her phone, muttering about her battery dying. She asks if she can borrow your charger. You smile. It feels absurdly comforting, this tiny exchange of voltage after the weight of history. You hand it over, and when she thanks you, her accent rolls like Latin softened by time. "Rome's eternal," she says absently, sipping her coffee. You almost tell her that eternity is a trick Rome learned early, that it doesn't mean immortality, just endless reinvention. But you stop yourself. Let her keep the magic. Rome thrives on people believing it never ends.
You finish your espresso and wander again, this time toward the Colosseum. Tour buses idle nearby, their air conditioning units humming like tame beasts. The arena looms ahead, its arches hollow but still defiant. Inside, crowds murmur and click cameras, their voices rising and falling like distant cheers. The same space that once echoed with death now echoes with awe, and maybe, deep down, the same thrill. You lean against a railing, feeling the rough texture of stone worn by 2 millennia of hands. Somewhere below, in the labyrinth where gladiators once waited, archaeologists have found graffiti, sketches of weapons, names scratched by trembling fingers, a crude heart beside the words "Vale, Lucius." Goodbye, Lucius. A farewell to a man who probably never walked out again. Historians still argue whether the Romans were crueler than we are, or just more honest about it. You think about the arenas of today, screens, politics, social media, and decide the debate might not matter. The structure changed, the appetite didn't. As the sun begins to set, you make your way to the Forum. The ruins glow gold in the evening light, columns casting long shadows over the cobbles. Crows perch on broken capitals. A violinist plays softly near the Arch of Titus, his melody floating through the warm air. The notes sound almost like a lament, and maybe they are.
The sigh of eternity, the whisper of the stones beneath your feet. They're patient. They've seen empires rise, rivers dry, and languages die. They'll outlast you, too, but they'll keep your footsteps somewhere inside their memory. The world changes, but the warnings remain. Rome's hunger stones, medieval or modern, all tell the same story. When the rivers shrink, when the stones speak, someone should listen. And as you rise to leave, you realize that's the truest advice for any time traveler. Not just to witness the past, but to hear what it's still trying to say. You walk toward the city lights, your shadow stretching across the ancient street. Behind you, the stones keep whispering, their murmur blending with the heartbeat of traffic and time. Rome eternal, Rome hungry, Rome remembered. The night air cools around you as the city quiets. The echo of your steps softens until it sounds like rain against marble. You slow your breathing, noticing how the rhythm of the modern world fades beneath the timeless hum of the stones. The lights of passing cars flicker like fireflies, reflections dancing on centuries-old walls. You find a quiet bench overlooking the river. The Tiber glides by, slow and silver, under the moonlight. Somewhere beneath that surface, the carvings still rest, the ancient warnings, the forgotten prayers, the proof that people once cared enough to carve their fears into eternity.
You close your eyes, letting the wind brush your face. The sounds of Rome, voices, water, the soft scrape of shoes, fold into one long sigh. Time feels thinner here, like the boundary between centuries has loosened. You imagine the ghosts of merchants and poets drifting beside you, content to watch the world keep spinning. Every city dreams, you think, and Rome dreams louder than most. Its dreams are made of stone and memory, of loss and survival. They whisper that even when the world feels fragile, even when rivers dry and warnings fade, something always endures. You let that thought linger, soft, steady, reassuring. The night deepens. The hum of the river grows fainter. The stars above look ancient and kind. You feel the weight of centuries settle gently around you, like a blanket woven from stories that refuse to die. And as your eyes grow heavy, you can almost hear the stones whisper, "Rest now. You've seen enough time for one night." End of script. Sweet dreams.